will be president for all Americans, and this is so important to me.
But wait, the official election day happens tomorrow with unprecedented scrutiny. One of Florida's electors on the way to vote is here with us today.
We're 5 years in and there is no light at the end of the tunnel.
Heartbreak and horror in Syria hits home in South Florida. What role does the U.S. play here? The million-dollar marketing of the 305, Pit Bull, and the pitfalls of government shaded from the sunshine. Good morning. So much to talk about this morning and an all-star roundtable ahead. Michael is on the road to recovery from knee surgery. We miss him. Want him back soon. And we begin today with electing the next president, because officially it has not happened yet, but it will tomorrow. The Electoral College meets tomorrow to officially elect Donald Trump as the next president of the United States. That constitutional process, involving 538 people you probably don't know, hardly gets a second thought until this year, when we've learned to expect the unexpected in presidential politics. Bernstein is one of Florida's 29 electors heading to Tallahassee for tomorrow's vote, and she joins us here with us today. On the way. Good morning. And thank you for stopping by.
My pleasure.
So rumor has it you were actually with Donald Trump this morning, true?
I was. That is absolutely true. Stopped by the golf course to
Mar-a-Lago.
No, at Trump International Golf Course this morning. No, Trump International in West Palm.
Oh, in West Palm.
Where I live. I live in Palm Beach.
A lot of properties.
So we belong to the club and just stopped by to say I'm off to Tallahassee, and just what an honor and privilege is to cast my electoral vote for him tomorrow.
Well, I want to just make it really clear that you have been a Trump supporter from the beginning.
Absolutely.
But as one of 29 electors in this state, there has been a push on nationally to flip 37 electors, which would give the electoral win not to Donald Trump. And I want to hear from you, your personal experience in that process. Have you been contacted?
Oh my goodness, it's
really, that means yes.
Yes, it's beyond belief. I never expected to have so much mail. Almost every other one of my emails, my personal emails, comes in from people I don't know, never heard of. The mail is beyond belief.
Like what? What are
Stacks they? I don't open it because, unfortunately, there may be some bad substances in some of the letters. So we have been warned not to open it. I spoke to the sheriff, and they told me not to open anything.
So wait, backtrack for me a second.
Yes.
So you've gone to law enforcement about
Absolutely.
The contacts, and so this is frightening to you, not just sort of a campaign with a political bent, but terrorism?
Well, it's not frightening, but you want to make sure that you're prepared. And when I did get a call, a woman threatening to publish all my personal information, my home address, my office address, my cell phone online. At that point, I did call our state attorney, who happens to be a Democrat and a good friend, Dave Ehrenberg, and also our sheriff, who also is a Democrat and a good friend, and they told me what to do.
Have you seen or heard the messages that you have opened? What is the request, and what is the sort of argument about what the flippers are looking for?
Correct. Most of the messages seem to be coming from the same source because they're pretty much the same. They're standard. A lot of the letters have the same address, exactly the same. It's printed the same. So obviously a lot of this is coming from the same source. But the message, they cite Alexander Hamilton. They cite trite things like Donald is a misogynist, he's a racist. All these things couldn't be further from the truth.
It's interesting that you mention that, because I think how this really came into sort of the public venue is an op-ed in the New York Times by a Texas elector whose name is Christopher Super, and I pulled it for you, and you had mentioned that you hadn't read it, so I don't want to surprise you with anything. But I will tell you, in the course of his op-ed, he lays out his argument for why he will not be voting for his party's candidate. And he says Mr. Trump lacks foreign policy experience and demeanor needed to be commander-in-chief. He calls Mr. Trump almost a demagogue. And finally, he says he alleges that the president-elect does not understand that the Constitution forbids a president to receive payments or gifts from foreign governments, alluding to Mr. Trump's business interests around the world and perhaps any connections with Vladimir Putin. And so I want to get your reaction to that kind of argument from a Republican elector.
Correct. Well, first of all, I've had the pleasure of knowing Donald personally as a friend and as a member of his clubs. We've done business with him, and I can tell you for over 2 decades that he has always surrounded himself with the best and the brightest people. So what he may lack in foreign policy experience, he will surround himself by the brightest people and U.S. senators, generals. I know what drives him, and he really, from the bottom of his heart, he just really wants to see this country be great again.
Do you understand, though, that there are people who have, like Mr. Super, have this kind of concern about him?
Yes, yeah. and I do not share that concern. I know him. I know what motivates him, and he really, from the bottom of his heart, he wants to see this country be great again. He will absolutely keep us safe again. I'm a mom. I'm a grandmom.
So that this segment does not turn into a political message.
Right, right.
That's kind of not where I was hoping to go today. But what I do want to get from you is your perspective on this. A flipping of the Electoral College has never happened in history.
Correct.
Any concerns that
not
this
at all.
Effort will be successful?
I do not believe.
And let me ask you this. In Florida, as in many other states, actually not voting as an elector for the person for whom the state has elected electorally is a crime. And so, in your opinion, do these people, are they committing a crime by aiding and abetting the suggestion that someone break the law?
Well, I would assume yes, because if you're someone's trying to get you to commit a crime, that's almost it's awful. It's an awful thing. I will honor, and I think the Florida 29 will honor our obligation to support and Mr. Trump and uphold our obligations.
Have you spoken to your state attorney about that kind of pressing of charges?
No.
It won't go that far?
No, I'm just trying to keep myself and my family safe and make sure I get to Tallahassee tomorrow to cast my vote.
You leaving today for Tallahassee?
Yes.
And so what do you expect tomorrow? Are you sort of amazed that so much attention is being given to what you're doing?
I'm shocked. When I agreed to be an elector, I really thought it was pretty much procedural. And I'm absolutely astonished by the volume of mail and calls. But listen, it's okay. We're prepared. And
well, welcome to the world of scrutiny.
Yes.
And we will be watching you very closely.
Thank
we wish you luck and safe travels.
Thank you so much.
And do
Thank
check
you
back
much.
when you come back.
And happy holidays.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank
and
you.
You got the memo, the red memo.
I did.
All right. Coming back through a local lens, the crisis unfolding in Aleppo right now as we speak. Stay tuned. At the United Nations, a Security Council vote on involvement in Aleppo right now, as a matter of fact, comes as civilian evacuations there are interrupted. The buses ready to take evacuees to safety are burning. The AP is reporting militants have set fire to a number of buses assigned to evacuate wounded and sick people from 2 villages in northern Syria. A mass evacuation is underway of citizens and rebel fighters trapped in constant street battling with Syrian government troops in East Aleppo. The ongoing human toll there raises questions here about U.S. action and inaction, past and future. And late this week, we asked South Florida Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, a veteran on the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
President Obama had an opportunity to really make a difference in Syria when he came to Congress and he said, if Syria uses gas, that is a red line that we will not put up with. If they cross that red line, we will take action. Many of us in Congress said, yes, President Obama, we're with you. Let's take action in Syria. We didn't take action. Assad has used chemical gas time and time again. We gave the green light to Russia to be the peacekeeper. And we've seen Russia has been part and parcel of the problem, massacring innocent civilians along with the Assad's regime.
The international politics of Syria sets up our local conversation about the people and South Florida's role. Dura Dagestani is a pediatric oncologist by profession. His role with the Syrian American Council of South Florida brings him here with us today. And also with us today is Paradise Afshar, who is a digital editor here at Local 10. She has reported on the Middle Eastern community for the Miami Herald and holds a master's in Middle Eastern Studies. And a surprise guest, I'm glad you can join us today. Thank you, Doctor, for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And I'd like to start, if we could, with this. I know I speak for so many, watching this horrific humanitarian crisis unfold via satellite in our homes. And I want to get a sense from you, what is happening there, and why isn't the world apparently responding to what we see?
Sure. What's happening there simply is genocide. And why the world is not responding? Because simply there is no leadership. And I mean with that, our administration, we decided, as Liana Ross said, not to get involved.
Well, we saw, and as you heard the Congresswoman talk about, there was a threat of involvement, a line in the sand that was crossed, and then no consequence.
Yes.
And I'm guessing that your take is that was part of the problem.
Absolutely. All what to have taken for our president just to deliver and attack the regime at that time, and then we would not have ended with the genocide. That I think this is just the beginning, because what's happening right now, everybody's talking about Aleppo and 500,000 people. Robert Ford, our ex-ambassador to Damascus, said that what next is Idlib with 1.5 million people, who's going to get genocide in the next 12 months.
You know, interesting that you say that. The head of Yad Vashem today, as a matter of fact, which is the official Holocaust memorial in Israel, came out and spoke wherever he was speaking to a group of people today, and talked about how this global atrocity must be stopped. And here is someone whose sole position is to make the world remember human atrocity on a grand scale, now finding himself again speaking for something happening decades later, almost so similarly. Paradise, I think a lot of people watching are really not clear. There's no white knight and black knight here. It is so confusing, the sides and who's fighting whom. And give us sort of a real primer on what we should know about this conflict.
Well, this is really the Arab Spring. When it started, this is really the remnants of it. When the Arab Spring started, remember, in Egypt, Tunisia, people uprising, this is the result of that uprising. The only difference is they kept fighting since 2011. The point is to get rid of President Assad and the unhappiness that they have for Assad. The upside is that when you're a dictator in a country, your main goal is just to remain in power. As long as Assad can remain in that seat, he is winning this, and he has funding coming from places like Iran, like Russia. It's helping him in this fight.
And so when, from an American prism, looking at Russia's influence there, yet Russia is the enemy of our enemy and so our friend in this case. And how does that even play out?
With Russia? Honestly, I don't have an answer to that, and I wish I did, because you have a country that's kind of, like you said, an enemy and a friend at the same time. You have a country that's supporting these bombings and that's supporting what you call genocide over there. So how do you combat that?
So let me bring it home for you by, there was an interview, Paradise, I believe you did this week, with a young South Florida woman named Dima, whose family is from Syria. She is not a refugee, as you pointed out. She's not among the refugees here, but she is part of a Syrian family who moved here because of the war. Take a listen to her for a moment.
One of the guys from the army came in, started banging on the door, opened the door, and put a gun to my sister's head. So after that happened, we had to leave. Some buildings have fallen due to bombs, and there's still people in there alive, and nobody can go in there to save them. So this has just become their grave. We're 5 years in, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel.
So, Dr. Dagestani, here is the story, the personal horror and heartbreak and loss that is occurring right now. Florida is one of the states accepting Syrian refugees, probably one of 5 or 6 states that has the most, relatively speaking.
Sure.
What are they going through here?
They escape from hell on earth and really going through another type of hell on earth. We have around 50 families that we received. The federal government initially said that they want to support them for 6 months. Now they cut it to 3 months. Some of them don't know English. Some of them even don't write and read. And they come with a wife and 4 or 5 children, and cultural shock and no support. The community trying just to gather and support them, but without the federal government really standing behind them, it's just another type of hell on earth.
You know,
can I cut in?
of
Sorry.
course.
One of the big problems a lot of them are having is their funding is cut after a certain point. So some of them, after 3 months, they're facing eviction. These people are having a hard time finding jobs even after those 3 months. So they're going right back to brink of homelessness after coming back from being a refugee in this country. There is a big crisis among those 50 families that we have here of daily, we don't know how we're going to eat tomorrow. And these aren't single people coming. A lot of these people are coming with 3, 4, 5 children. So these are large families.
And so what is the international role in refugee resettlement? Because the United States is not the only country accepting Syrian refugees. What is the global role here?
The main countries really that take in the thrust of this are the neighboring country, Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan, and they're getting a lot of financial support, not enough, of course, from the United Nations and other NGOs, basically.
You know, in my conversation with a congresswoman earlier this week, we were talking about refugees, and she had brought up that ISIS had threatened to infiltrate the refugee population with terrorists on their way to the United States. Is that fair? Is that something that you're concerned with?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think what our president-elect said, I very support. He said, I want to do everything I can to keep these people there because I'm seeing they're suffering here. So if we create a safe zone area, as our president-elect said, and keep them there, it's better for them, and it's really better for us.
I believe he called it extreme vetting, were Donald Trump's words, extreme vetting.
Right, that's for the refugee. What I'm saying, he said he want to keep them there with safe zone, and if he keep them there, then you don't need to bring them here, and there is no need for the extreme vetting. That's my point.
But what's the safe zone? I mean, you're talking about, you have people who are coming in, and anyone could be a terrorist. You have 2 years worth, at least 2 years of a vetting process already that's been in place to get these people cleared to come in. And these are people whose children aren't going to school in those 2 years, whose families are basically stopped living in these camps, who can't work in certain countries like Jordan. I think they may have lifted a law recently, but for the longest time, these people aren't working. These are 2 years of their lives are on pause, at least 2 years. So more vetting, it sounds great, but I'm more curious to know, what does more vetting mean? What does a safe zone mean in a war zone? How do we make this concrete?
Where would a safe zone be?
Yeah.
Yeah, a safe zone means that it's an area that the barrel bombs does not threat the civilian, the Russian airplane does not threaten them, and there is no bombing. So it's a safe area, so they can live in that area till we find a resolution. So that's what I'm saying. They don't want to come here if they have a safe zone. Why they're here? Because they are afraid they're going to get killed. So if I'm not talking about enemy of the enemy, our friend. So maybe Trump and Putin can sit down and say, let's cut all the bull that's happening and help the civilian that's suffering and do not bombard them and kill them.
But they've been bombing hospitals. I mean, those have traditionally been safe zones too.
I was going to say, and the evacuation process and the ceasefire for that was broken at the end of last week too.
Correct.
Yes.
I want to thank you both for coming in this morning. I mean, this is the United Nations Security Council is voting right now. Have we heard of what the vote was?
I've been refreshing my screen and so far nothing. But
okay, thanks. We're on top of that, and really appreciate your insight, and we will stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and next up, we take it all to this week's Roundtable. Stay with us. It is time for, yes, the final roundtable of the year, and we are going out big. Patricia Mazzei is the lead political reporter for the Miami Herald. Billy Corbin is a documentary filmmaker. His company, Raconteur, best known for Cocaine Cowboys and The U. H.T. Smith is an attorney and Uber law professor at Florida International University. And Justin Safey is an attorney and publisher of the Safey Review, a daily roundup of political news and opinion from around the state. And you do, I know a lot more than that. But welcome everyone to the, I mean, we have a vacation coming up. Ooh, so
Feliz Castro Muerto. Haven't seen you since the holiday.
I know.
Up until yesterday, I've been waving a flag outside Versailles.
As they say on Saturday Night Live, he's still dead. Sorry. Okay, you know what we really want to start with, though? The Electoral College vote tomorrow. Patty Mazzei, political reporter for the Miami Herald. You listened to Robin Bernstein about this effort to flip the vote. What is going on there?
Because the first person to mention that to me, I think, was the night of the election results coming in. It was like, well, now you have to ask the electors if they're actually going to vote for them. I was like,
well, the plan was from the get-go.
Like, look, I understand that maybe originally, back when the country was founded, that might have been something that happened, but that's just not the way things have evolved over time. Over the past week, I've been really fascinated to see these photos posted on Twitter and Facebook of the likes of Susie Wiles, who ran Donald Trump's Florida campaign, inundated, like her mailbox just stuffed with envelopes. And like Robin was saying, she didn't even read them. I imagine that's the case for a lot of the electors. It is strange to think that you're going to persuade the person who ran the winning campaign to change her mind. Having said that, I think the question of the Electoral College comes up every 4 years and then goes away because whoever the winner is never going to be interested in changing that. And so,
but who is the winner, though? Isn't that question beg?
The Electoral College tells you who the winner is, right?
To borrow Donald Trump's Twitter typo from yesterday, I think there's a lot of people who'd like to see him unprecedented. I think.
I wish we had that typo to put up.
Well, we also we have a situation.
Unprecedented. I mean, it's historic. It's historic to think that there's this many people who want to change something at this point.
Well, it's not unprecedented when you have a president who lost by more votes in the popular vote than any president in history, when you have the loser in the election who won more votes than any president in history other than Barack Obama in 2008. I agree with you, this whole Hamilton elector thing is extraordinarily unlikely. At the same time, it's not really out of the realm of reasonability.
Yeah, but I think this is, first of all, the founders really did a wonderful idea with regard to this Electoral College, number one. And number two, I think it should be utilized only when something substantial happens between the time of the vote and the time of the college. For instance, you can have a presidential candidate who gets indicted. You can find out that evidence that's irrefutable that they were conspiring with Russians to manipulate the election. We don't have that yet. And so I think that he will be, President-elect Trump will be confirmed and everything will move forward.
Well, Justin?
Well, I just think it's unprecedented, and I worry for the future of our democracy, because this has never happened before, where someone's basically trying, there's a group out there from the left that is trying to overturn the results of the election. Which would be very anti-democratic.
It happened a little in 2000 that they tried to get some of the electors to change.
Did it? Was that
was
not as public as it is?
It was social media, but it did. They tried to get some of the electors.
I don't recall, but there needs to be some sense of coming together. There needs to be some sense of this person won the election and acceptance. Heal the wounds. We cannot have a constant campaign. That campaign was so divisive. America needs time for everyone to come together. And like Barack Obama said, like Hillary Clinton said after the election, let's give the president-elect a chance to run the country and to do good for our country. And let's accept it.
Tour, do you think?
What's that?
Was his thank you tour a healing tour?
Who's that?
The president-elect.
President-elect. His thank you tour was showing thanks to the people who elected him to be president.
I'm sorry.
I think that it was absolutely appropriate for the president-elect to go to the stage to thank. I think that the people on the left are the ones, and I teach my children, when you lose a ball game, when you lose a lacrosse game, when you lose a basketball game, you congratulate the winner.
He's a killer lacrosse player.
I'm not, but I teach them that when to be a good sport, there's good sportsmanship.
I'm sorry,
and we have to.
The people on the right, the people on the right are only giving this latitude to Trump. They gave no such latitude for 8 years to Barack Obama. They called him a Manchurian candidate. They called him a Muslim and a Kenyan. And let's
the right never tried to overturn the results of the Electoral College.
If you were a truly democratically elected president of the United States, you would say, I won the election, but let's investigate. Let's have a bipartisan investigation to truly understand the extent at which perhaps a fascist regime in Russia might have impacted the outcome of this election. And the president has denigrated over a dozen intelligence agencies, the United States of America, to support Vladimir Putin. What kind of coming together, what kind of America joining hands across the aisle effort is that on behalf of the president-elect?
And not only that, as a member of the left, let me just tell you that the divisiveness
left side
clearly,
of the screen, you mean, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Left side, left. That the divisiveness was instigated by Donald Trump. He's the one, as if you recall, Justin, the election is rigged. We can't trust the election. The election is rigged. Now, there's nothing wrong with the election because I won. You can't have it both ways.
I don't disagree the election was rigged, but since when are elections rigged against the rich white guy? I mean, have you ever heard of that?
Let me ask you this, Justin.
Only in Uganda.
I mean, this week, the headlines this week were about the intelligence community really now, I think, on the same page, that Russia, and probably run by Vladimir Putin, did have some activity in trying to sway the election. The why and the agenda is still not clear. Is that a concern?
I think it absolutely is a concern. It's very much of a concern, but I don't think it's a reason for people to change electors to change their Electoral College vote, and I don't think that's a legitimate. However, I would say that last year in September of 2015, the Washington Post reported that there was hacking into the federal government's Office of Personnel Management, 22 million records of people who had security clearances were hacked into and were released to we don't know who the hackers were. They suspect there was Chinese hackers. I know friends of mine who work for President George W. Bush. Their personal records were hacked into, and not just their files, but there's information in there about their friends and their family. Yeah. To me, that is a much more egregious violation, a cyber attack on the United States of America, to have 22 million records of Americans who worked for the federal government, lots of sensitive data in there, and yet we're not seeing anyone call for a select committee in the Senate to look into that. That's more of a threat to the national security.
You should wear a Fitbit. With a pivot like that, you could have gotten all 10,000 of your steps in the day, just like that. I don't disagree with you. The OMB hack was egregious, and I don't understand. And I think because we did nothing about it, it has allowed this door to open, and America is exposed, and America's democracy is exposed. And while I agree with you,
people are just blasé about it. Yahoo just had this yet another huge breach of email accounts.
Yahoo?
Right.
They still have email accounts, and they still get breached, and people just kind of go about, like, they don't see, hacking is one of those things that it's not a concrete, easy to see, like, here is what was stolen.
But although the New York Times did an incredible story
you're
about
right,
that.
and that story, everyone should read it. It's just shocking, just how one tiny little, human error after another leads to this humongous problem. But I'm not sure the general public lives their daily life worried about
unless you shop at Target.
Justin is correct that this was what he's talking about was a much bigger hack, affecting more people, but not more consequential. You're talking about undermining the democracy. Our election by people, of the people that lead us, is what is the foundation of our nation. And so we definitely need a select committee to look into that. And you know what? We should also have a select committee.
And look, here's the thing. And look, the responsibility lies with Barack Obama. The fact that Vladimir Putin thought that he could come in and attack Hillary Clinton, who Barack Obama campaigned for Hillary Clinton the way no president has ever campaigned for his successor in American history. Vladimir Putin had no fear whatsoever that he could come in, interfere, basically try to take down Hillary Clinton. And the reason for that is he did not fear Barack Obama. I hate to see Barack Obama leave office with Vladimir Putin if it's true that he did this, and like you said, many people in the intelligence community think that it was, but it's really hurtful to the United States because it sends a message around the world that if the Russians or any other country can do that in the United States, what do you think they can do in Europe? What do you think they're going to do with the German elections that are coming up next year? What do you think they did with Brexit? It's possible in Sweden and other Western democracies, if they can do it in the United States, it's a problem for their other Western democracies.
And Putin is going to fear Trump? It's his candidate that got elected.
All right, can I just say, hold on, because the roundtable is just getting started, and we'll be back in 2.
All right.
We are back with a really rocking roundtable, and I want to bring up a report this week, the Health and Human Services report, that Florida has been funding Medicaid for dead people. Really, most of the 26 million now returned, but Billy, I mean, this has to be just a gut kick to the state.
Yeah, $26 million paid out in Medicaid to dead people in Florida in just the last 5 years. But hey, Obamacare does require coverage even if you have a pre-existing condition.
Which is death?
Well, what is death but a pre-existing condition, at the risk of getting terribly philosophical here? And yes, which is rare, they've seemed to have clawed back 24 million of that. And that's the problem, is that with Medicare and Medicaid, what happens is that they automatically pay out. And only later, if some issue or dispute is raised, can they try to get it back. And meanwhile, those of us living try to get the benefits that we're entitled to, and we can't get it, but yet the dead people get it. And I think this is a problem also with Cuba, because in a lot of cases you have, in South Florida anyway, hundreds of millions of dollars in Medicare fraud being perpetuated by Cuban immigrants who then abscond to the island with their ill-gotten gains from our federal tax money. And in some cases, they even become the governor of Florida.
Well, two very different apples and oranges.
He's throwing everything at you.
Yeah, this is like a verbal Medicaid basket.
By the way, he has his 10,000.
He's trying to catch up with me on Fitbit.
Absolutely. You know, these are the kinds of things that undermine people's confidence in the government.
Of course.
I mean, you can't do something as basic as confirm that the people that you're paying are alive. Now that shows a total incompetence, and that's all I have to say about that.
You know, my biggest question, Justin, is does this sort of put a dent in the private model that the governor wants the state to have?
Well, I always say you can't beat something with nothing. And the private model, I don't think it has its flaws, but I don't know that it's any better than the public model. Certainly the public model wasn't a error-free, fraud-free model either. So I think that, look, we spend a lot of money in this state, in this country, on Medicaid and on health care, on Medicare, and we know that South Florida happens to be a place where there's a lot of health care fraud that goes on with the Medicaid and the Medicare program. So I think that they need to do better. Obviously, this is a horrific example of fraud, but it is good news that they did have recovered a lot, if not most, of that money. So they have discovered it, but I don't think that you can't indict the private system because the public system wasn't better.
Patty?
Well, and the reason they pay out is because they want there to be a continuity of care for the people who are alive, or the majority of people they help. So trying to find a way around that, where you could say, well, we're not going to pay until we verify if you're alive. If you are and you're sick and that's going to delay your medications, you have to wonder if that fix would be worse than then trying to claw the money back.
Wow, this is sort of like, is there any positive news here whatsoever?
At least we're not talking about dead voters.
That's a good point.
Yet.
Yet. So this morning, actually, there's some news breaking. You talked about the death of Fidel. Right now, we know that there have been arrests of some dissidents and government opponents, and El Sexto, the musician Danilo Maldonado's attorney, Kimberly Motley, was detained in Cuba. An American human rights attorney was detained. Released, we learn, thanks
16
to
hours
Billy,
ago
16
on
hours
Twitter,
ago.
she announced.
What does that say on this second anniversary of the opening of Cuba-U.S. relations? Is that are in jeopardy with the president-elect, no doubt. What does this do to that whole process?
Well, I think it's a question of what did you expect? I mean, it wasn't going to change overnight. It wasn't even going to change in 2 years.
An arrest of an American.
We've had 60 years of a failed policy with the embargo, with no alternative suggested by anyone else. We now have an opportunity to effectuate some kind of change 90 miles away from the United States of America, where somehow Russia has been the greatest influence and ally over there, where we certainly should be. And so I think it's going to be a slow-going process, and I hope we see the new administration embrace and support it.
And as a great Miamian once said, you cannot beat something with nothing. And so here is a policy that's been instituted after we've seen for half a century that what we were doing did not work. And some will say that the person was released so quickly only because of the opening that we had.
We had a story on the front page of today's paper about the 2-year anniversary of the policy and how the White House had this kind of muted set of meetings on Thursday with their supporters, basically to rally them to say, hey, stay into this even though we'll be gone, you know. But one of the interesting parts about reporting that was there is a real disagreement among what to do with the dissidents among the two camps here, the anti-embargo folks and the pro-embargo folks, because the pro-embargo politicians in South Florida have always said those are the only people we should support. The dissidents, the political opposition in Cuba, we should fund them, we should help them, and that's it, nobody else. And then the anti-embargo folks argue that that hasn't worked, and what they need to do is fund small business owners who will become the new middle class, political class over time in Cuba, and they will actually have power to get, reforms on the island. And not all the dissidents agree with either of these positions. There's an actual split among the Cuban dissident community. And so who gets the power of the United States political establishment behind them is, I think, going to be one of the questions under the Trump administration.
Well, I think that this, arresting an American citizen in Cuba who went down there to defend an artist, okay, who was jailed after Castro's death, tells you all, at least for me, all I need to know, that President Obama's opening is being disrespected and disregarded by the Cuban government. For them to do that, it's an affront to President Obama's opening that they would arrest an American lawyer down there, especially right now. So from my perspective, I think that Donald Trump has laid the case for changing the policy unless there's a piece, came to Miami and said it before he was elected, that unless we get a better deal for the Cuban people, that he's going to undo what President Obama's did. And I think that's the right strategy. So hopefully there can be democratic reform. These political prisoners will be released, and these artists who are expressing their free rights, their human rights, will not be jailed inappropriately.
This is the same Donald Trump who was down there in violation of the embargo trying to make money. So his hypocrisy, we don't even want to hear what he has to say. The one thing I think both sides can agree, if there's going to be change, it's going to come from inside Cuba, not 90 miles away, just like it came from South Africa.
I'm going to make an executive decision here. We're coming back for one more segment of Roundtable. Stay tuned. So here's a Roundtable bonus on this last TWISIF of the year. Predictions for 2017. TWISIF. This week in South Florida. TWISIF.
TWISIF.
Everything's about an acronym, you know that. Okay, TWISIF. Hashtag TWISIF on Twitter, just in case. H.D. Smith, your predictions from 2017 from where you sit.
As we know, Eric Schneiderman, who is the Attorney General of New York, was the person that handled the settlement of the $25 million settlement involving Trump's phony university. He's investigating now issues relating to the Trump Foundation and some illegal activity. I predict that he will call for Donald Trump and the foundation to be indicted during 2017.
Wow, okay, that's on tape and duly recorded, and we'll check back. Justin.
Well, I guess since we've been talking about President-elect Trump, I think that President-elect Trump is going to exceed a lot of people's expectations. I think I keep reading in the New York Times, just read something over the weekend that his foreign policy team is going to fail. It's not put together the right way. I think that the expectations for a lot of people in the mainstream news media have set for Donald Trump have been very low. I think you're going to see the economy do very well, and I think you're going to see a really positive agenda pass through Congress.
So I like to say, keep expectations low and performance high. That's not a bad thing.
It works. That's every politician's dream.
Billy, what do you think?
Well, 2016 has been a great year if you hate freedom and good music. But let's be. I'm here for comic relief, right? I'm one of those guests. I'm the court jester, I'm the clown, like Elsie Hastings.
And no F-bombs, please.
But I'll try. There's no delay. But no, I mean, for 2017, I think the rich are going to get richer, the poor are going to get poorer, and the Miami Dolphins are going to win the Super Bowl.
All right.
Whoa.
Okay, bring him back for that one.
Yeah, well, we'll need to have this conversation.
But who would have thought at the beginning of the year that one of the highlights of 2016 would have been the Miami Dolphins? How fun are they now?
What can we do with the Canes? Can we do anything with the Canes?
Sit and wait. Be patient.
Okay.
Be patient.
Patty Mazzei, your prediction for 2017, understanding that you are a political reporter with absolutely no bias.
And we can make no predictions because 2016 told us we
2017,
can't make any predictions about 2017. I predict I'm never going to turn my Twitter alerts off. At the end of every election, you turn off all these people that you were following who were elected officials. I think Donald Trump has saved Twitter, and now his alerts will be permanently baked on my phone.
Do you know, can we talk about that for just a moment? Because Twitter as a reporting tool has never been better or worse.
I agree. I'm always shocked, and I shouldn't be, by the level of vitriol and confirmation bias from people who refuse to believe what is being reported. But I actually think that will be our biggest job in 2017. Won't be covering Trump or Cuba or whatever the issue is, but actually media literacy and trying to, play our role that we're supposed to play in a democracy.
And I'm proud to still be Twitterless.
And until Putney, I don't talk to eggs.
Michael
Would he
Putney?
upload an avatar already?
Well, I'm glad you brought up Michael, because we're off for the next couple of weeks. He will be back with 2017 with Twisif. We will effort to get his photograph on Twitter. I know he's watching. Stop being an egg. And I want to thank you all for being with us this last week. You are great, and we loved having you all year and next year. And happy holidays to
Happy
you.
holidays.
Happy holidays.
All right.
Merry Christmas, Glenna, because we're saying Merry Christmas
Merry
again,
Christmas,
folks.
Happy
Merry
Hanukkah,
Christmas.
good Kwanzaa for all of you who don't believe in anything. Good New
Festivus.
Year, Festivus. All right, speaking of which, next up, we're not done yet. Government in the Sunshine, personally brought to you this week by Mr. 305 and his sexy beaches. Dale. And this is a live look now from our Fort Lauderdale cam. And here is Weather Authority meteorologist Jennifer Correa with this Sunday forecast.
Good afternoon, South Florida. It is so warm out there. Plus, it's also still breezy winds out of the southeast. Now, here's a beautiful live view out of Hollywood Beach Cam. It turned out to be a beach day after we started off the morning with lots of clouds and a few showers. Now, those showers have certainly dissipated and temperatures going up into the low and mid 80s. Eventually, we're going to get near that record high of 87 degrees for Miami and Fort Lauderdale, which, by the way, was last reached in 1989. This is what it actually feels like out there. Feels close to the 90-degree mark for a lot of parts of South Florida. Homestead already feeling like that, and above that in the Middle Key. So we'll continue with this warm weather pattern. So far, we're nice and quiet out there with a couple clouds building inland. Now by tomorrow, still reaching the mid 80s, and we are staying above average even as we start off the winter season on Wednesday. By Friday, that's when the next cold front will arrive, moderating our temperatures back to the 70s.
Jennifer, thank you. All right, full disclosure, I am a big fan of Pitbull, his music more than his image, but for our purposes today, he gets the Government in the Sunshine Award for bucking bureaucrats and his own lawyers by making public what state tourism marketers would not. This week, he revealed that Visit Florida, the state tourism marketers, paid him $1 million tax dollars to promote Florida, which is something he was already doing at no cost. If you know anything about Pitbull brand, besides his clothing line and his vodka, he has spent his whole career promoting the 305. He's kind of like Jackie Gleason, but more charming and with a Latino backbeat. His fans around the world, they get that, so why wouldn't the people who run Visit Florida? Right now, its CEO is taking heat for keeping Pitbull's contract terms as a trade secret. Well, he should be taking heat for not knowing free PR when he sees it, and in this case, hear it. Florida lawmakers are now scrutinizing Visit Florida's $79 million annual budget. And of that, it has already spent, this time, a collective $4 million on things like auto racing and British soccer, calling those moves smart moves to target high-end foreign travelers, and in Pitbull's case, a young urban traveler and tourist. Friday, the governor requested the CEO of Visit Florida resign, and it's tough to tell if he took issue with how that money was spent or that it was kept secret, or whether to take the spotlight off his own support of keeping trade secrets in government spending. Using celebrities as brand ambassadors is standard operating procedure for marketers, you knew that, and probably pretty effective. And good for Pitbull, making as much money as he can. But too bad, this time, taxpayers are footing the $1 million bill for something they've been getting all along for free. So, what do you think? We invite you to weigh in on any topic you like. Email, Facebook, Twitter, any of these addresses. We are very easy to find. We are off until the new year. We wish you a beautiful holiday season and a happy new year, and we'll see you in 2017.